Last week in Cleveland, the first division title of 1971 was won. It was captured by Nick Skorich's Browns, a team that has been either very brilliant or very bad. The key to this phenomenon is their courageous quarterback, Bill Nelson. The man with the surgical knees has led his team to several big victories, but he also was there when the Browns lost 4 straight for the first time in their history. At one point this year, Paul Brown's Bengals lost 7 straight games, but the Bengals take pride in finishing strong. Like their opponents, the key for Cincinnati is found at quarterback, where injuries have taken a heavy toll. It got so Paul Brown. Indeed, in one game, his punter, Dave Lewis, led the team. The critical injury came 2 years ago, when promising Greg Cook went out, perhaps never to return. Virgil Carter, his replacement, missed several games this year, and his backup, rookie Ken Anderson, has also been injured. But going into this game, the Bengals have won 3 straight, and amazingly, we're only 2 games behind the Browns. Their defense has been magnificent, giving up merely 7 points per game in the 3 victories. But on this gray day in Cleveland, the Browns would be the Bengals' biggest test. At stake were many things. There's the pride of Paul Brown in sending his young club against the team that bears his name. There's the championship of Ohio, for the Browns won the first game in Cincinnati. And certainly not the least important, at stake today is the crown in the AFC's Central Division. I'm Bob Delaney, and this is the NFL Game of the Week. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Cleveland Browns. The bitter rivalry got underway with the first play of the game, producing a big break. Fred Willis fumbled the opening kickoff, and Cleveland recovered on their opponent's 4-yard line. It was a devastating blow for the Bengals and quite out of character. Despite their record, Cincinnati has suffered few turnovers this season. Another look at this crucial mistake is interesting. Willis was hit low by Ernie Kellerman, then high by Bo Cornell, who stripped the ball away as it bounced toward the Bengals' goal line. Now watch the first man to arrive at the ball try to field it on the bounce and to take it in all the way. He overran the ball, and luckily for Cleveland, their coverage was good and they still made the recovery. The man who overran the ball is number 41, young Dave Jones, a wide receiver who was installed on the specialty teams because of his good hands. In this situation, his hands betrayed him. Nevertheless, in this game, which was so important to both teams, both on the field and in the front office, the Browns had the big break on the very first play and great position on their enemy's 4-yard line. Leroy Kelly shot through the Bengals' goal line defense for the touchdown. The Browns had scored first and led 7-0. The reemergence of the Browns' running game is a big story this year. Kelly has seemed not to be running well the past few seasons. Then recently, Nick Skorich revamped the offensive line. Note the superb blocking on Kelly's touchdown. This is what has made the ground game go, and Kelly has responded with 3 consecutive games over 100 yards. The big change came at tackle, where last year's number 1 pick, Bob McKay, has replaced Monty Clark, and rookie Doug Deacon has come from nowhere to win a job from 13-year veteran Dick Shafrath. The Browns kicked off for the second time in a minute and a half, and this time the deep man was Paul Robinson. Watch Robinson closely, for the man who gained over 1,000 yards in his rookie season is now a bench warmer in Cincinnati. His return had Cincinnati in good field position that was quickly improved upon by Fred Willis, one of the reasons that Robinson hasn't been playing. A look at Willis's run in slow motion shows a fine block on the outside linebacker by number 44, Doug Dressler, the Bengals' other setback. This series set the tone for the game, as both teams behind crisp blocking would run the ball at each other all day long. The Bengals settled for 3 points on this series, but on the next one, again led by the running of Willis, they went the length of the field. A key play was a third down pass by Carter. Note the Bengals' fine blocking holds true on passes also, as Carter threw to Bob Trumpy, the largest wide receiver in the game. The 6'6" former tight end made a first down. After the pass to Trumpy, Carter stayed on the ground until confronted with another possession play at the Browns' 13. Here, he faked to Willis, then flipped to Dressler, who snuck into the flat alone. He was forced out at the 4, but on the next play, bulled his way in for the touchdown that put Cincinnati ahead 10-7. The Bengals had showed considerable poise in rallying from behind. On Cleveland's next series, Bill Nelson was pressured by Steve Chomazak, threw on the run, and had the ball deflected to Al Beauchamp. Now the breaks in the game were even, but the score was soon to be even more one-sided. On the second play of the second period, Carter had time to wait for Trumpy to come open across the middle, and only a great save by Ben Davis stopped him from scoring. But Davis's tackle only prolonged the inevitable as Fred Willis swept around the Browns' left flank for the touchdown. On the repeat, we can see an example of Cincinnati's devastating blocking. Number 73, Pat Matson, leveled the cornerback. Then Willis just sailed over number 34 safety Mike Howell into the end zone. The Bengals had obliterated Cleveland's early lead and now led themselves 17-7. The score was a testament to Cincinnati's fine running attack. Where in the early years it consisted of Paul Robinson and Jess Phillips, now added to them are Essex Johnson and youngsters Doug Dressler and Fred Willis. This fivesome gives Cincinnati incredible depth at the vital running back position. For most of the second quarter, neither team could do much with the ball, although Leroy Kelly had his moments. Seven consecutive series ended in punts or turnovers, with neither Cleveland or Cincinnati putting any more points on the board. And the few times the ball was put in the air, something always happened to thwart a game. Once on their own goal line, Cincinnati almost suffered a costly turnover. Cleveland kept their opponent's running game in check and defensed well Carter's outlet passes to his backs, which had worked so well in the first period. With time running out in the half, Nelson completed a pass to Frank Pitts, who paid for it. Cleveland was desperate to get on the board once more before the half ended, and to do it, they would have to throw the ball. Unfortunately, Nelson was pressured again by the hard-rushing Bengal line and forced to do something he does not do well, throw on the run. The result was another interception by Al Beauchamp, the second game in a row that the linebacker has stolen 2 passes. Beauchamp's theft, with little over a minute remaining, seemed to spark Cincinnati, and for the first time in 13 minutes, they moved the ball deep into Cleveland territory. But Cleveland now was playing good defense, and even a tricky double reverse didn't fool them, as Ben Davis covered well. Cincinnati settled for another Horst Muhlmann field goal. As the Bengals' lead rose to 20-7, Abraham watched in disgust on the sidelines. Abraham is a tradition in Cleveland. He's known as the man in the brown suit, and he's caught all extra points and field goals since the team was formed in 1945. During the Browns' losing streak, Abraham changed to a green suit to bring the Browns luck. It has, and now the man in the brown suit wears green. With 28 seconds left in the half and trailing 20-7, the Browns came roaring downfield on two outstanding plays. Leroy Kelly had sprung for 27 yards on the sweep, and after a little pause on the sidelines with time left for just one more play, Bill Nelson delivered the coup de grace. Bear Hooker's catch and run had put the Browns to within 6 of Cincinnati, but more importantly, had given the Browns new life. They went into the locker room needing only a touchdown to go ahead. The Bengals had dominated the first half, but with the division title at stake, the Browns were coming on strong. We'll be right back after this brief message with the NFL Game of the Week. The Browns came out for the second half down by 6, but with that overused thing momentum from their score at the end of the half. Yet they were stopped easily on their first series. Kelly and Scott unable to run, and Nelson unable to hit his receivers on the third down play. The Bengals were sitting on a precarious 6-point lead, and Carter wanted to increase it through the air. But on his first series of the half, he was unable to do so. This was to be, in retrospect, a key series of the game. Carter and number 44, Doug Dressler, moved the Bengals deep into Cleveland territory here, but the play would be nullified by a clip. Instead of a first down on the 6, the Bengals had a third down on the 38. Then watch the top of the screen. As the Browns' left end, number 80, Joe Jones, gets his hand on Carter's pass. This should have set up fourth down on the 38, but another major penalty made it 3rd and 30 on the Bengals' own 47. And Joe Jones kept the Bengals moving backwards and out of field goal range by roping down Willis. The Bengals had gone 40 yards in reverse and had to punt. It's interesting that the Browns have reverted to using Kelly as a punt return man. It's rare that a team will use its superstar on the bomb squads, but Kelly's hands are so reliable that Skorich this year has put number 44 back on the return team for the first time since Jim Brown retired. Kelly had led the league in punts and kickoff returns his first 2 years as a pro. So the Browns took over on their own 17, still down by 6, and Bill Nelson went to the air. A quick pop to Morin over the middle tightened up the Bengals secondary, and Nelson quickly took advantage. Behind perfect protection, he dropped back and went long for Frank Pitts. It was a 53-yard touchdown play for Nelson and his newly acquired favorite target, Mr. Pitts, who had come to the Browns from Kansas City for a draft choice. A repeat of the play shows why it worked. Watch the protection Nelson received, especially from Bob McCabe blocking on number 82 Royce Berry, and from setback Kelly keeping out linebacker Al Beauchamp, who had blitzed. Nelson had plenty of time to set up and throw. Pitts had beaten the Bengals cornerback number 20, Lamar Parrish, grabbed the ball and broke an attempted tackle by safety Ken Riley, going all the way. Pitts coming to Cleveland to replace the aging Gary Collins has given the Browns something they have sorely needed. Pitts and Hooker now give Cleveland quickness and speed at both wide receiver spots. And Pitts' score plus the conversion put Cleveland ahead 21-20. The rest of the quarter went scoreless for both teams, although both teams moved well before bogging down. Paul Brown put Essex Johnson into the game for the first time, and number 19 helped carry Cincinnati near midfield, giving a preview of what he was to do a little later. But here, Carter and the Bengals failed on 3 plays. It was the second time in the half and the third time in the game the Bengals had reached midfield, but were just a little too far out for Horst Muhlmann's toe and had to give the ball up by punting. The Browns, too, moved the ball well the rest of the third quarter, but came up empty. The Browns have had trouble establishing their running game this season, but today Kelly and Scott were able to pick up some big gains, though they were inconsistent. Repeating the last play, watch Kelly's convoy, number 66, Gene Hickerson, pull out and lead Kelly around right end on a play Hickerson must have run 1,000 times, dating back to Jim Brown's day. Bo Scott then sliced through a hole on the other side, and his individual effort took the ball inside Bengals territory. But on 3 plays, Nelson failed to dent the brown and orange. Like the Bengals, the Browns disdained trying a field goal from around midfield and gave up the ball as the third quarter ended. On the first play of the fourth quarter, the Bengals struck gold. Essex Johnson ran the counter play to perfection. He popped through a huge hole, then outraced everyone, and in one loud cannon shot, Essex Johnson had put the Bengals back on top. It was nothing new for Johnson. He had electrified the NFL all year with his dazzling runs, and this one was the league's longest of the year. Johnson didn't start and carried only 4 times today, but gained 109 yards, and his 86-yard burst put the Bengals ahead 27-21 with 12 seconds gone in the final period. Trailing by 6 again, Bo Scott quickly took Cleveland deep into Bengals territory on a 35-yard gallop. But again, the Bengals stiffened on 3 downs inside their 10, and the Browns settled for a short field goal, putting them down by 3. Then came the big series of the game for the Bengals offensively. Another brilliant run by Essex Johnson, this time with a Carter pass, took the Bengals into Browns territory. But from here, the Browns' defense played tough when they had to, and Cincinnati failed when it had to succeed. It looked like this sweep would break open, but watch the Browns rookie, number 1 draft pick cornerback Clarence Scott, number 22, fight off his block to trip up Fred Willis for no gain. Two more plays failed, and the Bengals this time did try a field goal from 52. Figuring if he missed Horst Muhlmann's kick would be as good as a punt. He did miss, and with 6.5 minutes left, Cleveland took over on the 20. Nelson needed a score here, and he wanted to use up as much of the clock, although none of the Browns' touchdowns today had been long drives. But the main thing was to score. He chose this time to go with his short game, mixing the running of Kelly and Scott with short passes to his receivers, particularly to tight end Milt Moran on quick pops over the middle. Having set up the Bengals with this short game, only once did Nelson deviate, and it almost cost him as the Bengals secondary stayed right with Pitts. So Nelson went back to his short game and continued to pick up the first downs. The reasons for the short game were obvious. By throwing to his tight end over the middle, he minimized the risk of the interception of the long pass or the sideline pass, and Moran's good hands ensured keeping the ball. Likewise, using Kelly on this drive also ensured the Browns keeping the ball, as Kelly rarely fumbles. Down by 3, the Browns would have taken a field goal on this drive, as a tie game wouldn't have hurt them. But on second down, with 2 minutes to play on the Bengal 22, Nelson's hammer strategy paid off, as Kelly finally broke away on a sweep. Then, following his pulling guard, number 66, Gene Hickerson, Kelly swept left, went up and over. At least, the ball went over, and it was a touchdown. It was a fitting end to a drive that consisted of 14 plays and had taken 5 minutes. A drive reminiscent of the Browns of old. A methodical and confident drive that featured blocking and running. Kelly had led the Browns on this drive and, in fact, all day, gaining 127 yards, putting him over 800 on the year with a shot at another 1,000-yard season. With a minute and a half left, the Bengals had one last gasp. But it was choked off on an interception by Ernie Kellerman, and the Browns had finally sealed the doom of the Cincinnati Bengals. There are so many ironies to this important game and its result. The Browns, outplayed for much of the game, had come back with one final brilliantly executed drive, and their defense had tightened when it had to preserve victory. The Browns' victory ended the Bengals' second miracle run for the playoffs in as many years. Cleveland clinched the AFC Central with its victory. Ironic because they have the worst record of any division leader, but are the first to clinch their division. This is the 6th time in the last 8 years the Browns have won a division or conference title. So their success is no fluke. Though they no longer are the dynasty that won 10 consecutive conference crowns in their early years, Cleveland's consistency has been remarkable. There has been only one losing season in 27 years. For the other 26, the Browns have been at or near the top. Today's victory was especially sweet, coming over Paul Brown, the man who formed the club in 1945, and with the Bengals surprisingly won the division last year. But this is 1971, and the crown is gone to the Cleveland Browns, a name synonymous with success. We'll be right back after this brief message with the NFL Game of the Week.